final point I'll make about this is good decisions made on bad data are just bad decisions you don't know about yet. So any way you can use any of this terminology to help get better support from your business side, please take it. You can't steal it from me. I'm giving it to you. My role in the space is to help you tell a better story and have a deeper understanding of the value of things that are often thought of in the back office, clerical, dull, and tactical things around data management, which I believe is extremely strategic. So I mentioned that there's no digital transformation without data management, so let me break all that down for you. First, let me take a drink. When we think about digital transformation, how many of you have been thrust into digital transformation based on what's been happening over the last year? I love this little meme that probably a lot of you have seen in LinkedIn and elsewhere. Who led the digital transformation in your company? Was it your CEO, your CTO, or COVID-19? Look at that other cartoon with that guy standing in the boardroom just talking about, maybe we'll do it in a couple years from now, and COVID-19 just slamming right into the window. So a lot of us have been pushed into the space when maybe we weren't ready, or our data wasn't ready yet. So now is the time. The people who are surviving and thriving more in this pandemic world in terms of their business are ones that actually had the data ready. They had that data foundation built already. You can always start now, but you've got to get that foundation built. I'm just waiting for it to load here. It's doing pretty good for a while. So when you think about digital transformation, divide it up into 4 areas. A lot of people talk about it this way: people, technology, process, and data. I focus on the data portion, and within that, the structured data portion: master data, reference data, metadata. The reason I focus on that part, by the way, is those are representative outputs of good data management. If you have great master data, that means you have great data management. If you have terrible master data, it means your data governance doesn't work, your data stewardship isn't in place, your data management isn't up to snuff. So I see those as very representative, tangible outputs of good data management. You want to see how good somebody's data is? Take a look at their master data. That can tell you everything. So when you think about digital transformation, I see 3 phases of it. 3 phases of digital transformation that I've identified in my work across all the different categories that I've touched and interacted with. And part of what I try and share with you today are the common themes, common trends, the standard ways I see people look at their world. So every digital transformation journey goes through these 3 phases, and see if they sound familiar to you. The first one is you're stuck in a legacy state. Multiple silos. Different departments, sales, marketing, finance, operations. They have different systems that support those departments, and those systems have different data, and people tend to operate within their silo with the data they've got and have trouble connecting it across different systems. Sound familiar? Multiple hierarchies, duplicates, all kinds of data problems when sales and marketing and finance want to get together and talk about the same thing. Now, a legacy state doesn't necessarily mean everything's old. You could buy a brand new system for your marketing department tomorrow, and it could create another silo. So it's more in your, conceptually and culturally that people have to move out of this legacy state. Now you move to the next phase, which is this idea of being relationship-centric across an integrated enterprise. The objective is, how do you put the most important elements of your business at the center of what you do, both strategically and systematically? There's a lot of talk about customer 360, product 360. 360 is a circle. Circle is centric, centricity. That geometry works for me. You need a point in the middle, that entity that you do that 360 around. And so that idea of being centric is really important for an organization. So everybody has access to what they need to know about whatever the topic is. Could be customer, could be vendor, could be partner, could be prospect, could be product, could be service, could be offering, location. All those important entities about your business are at the center of what you do in your strategy, in your operations, and in your systems. But you've got to move outside your own company. Being an integrated enterprise is great internally, but how do you interact with other parties that you operate with across a value chain? I call that being part of a trust network in these connected ecosystems. We heard already from Jackie about how blockchain can help companies interoperate more seamlessly together. Another example of a trust network. Think about the folks you work with in your go-to-market. How well can you interoperate with them? How often can you share the same data back and forth and have a common understanding? That's why it's key to be part
Para
of
mí,
a trust
el libro de
network.
Mormón es un libro de fe.
Now, the universal requirements I've seen to move from a legacy state to an integrated enterprise and into connected ecosystems, there's two universal requirements. One is authenticated identity, and the other one is a common data structure. You need to be able to validate each identity of each entity. You have to know who you're interacting with and be confident that you should have that relationship. And then you need to have a common data structure so your systems can talk to each other. Again, very simple way to describe this transformation, but all the way across, unless you have a common data structure and standardized data, you can't move from multiple silos to being relationship-centric to being part of a trust network. The classic challenge that you all deal with is you've got these multiple departments and systems: sales, marketing, finance, operations. You've got different regions. You might be just in one country. You might be in multiple countries. You might be across the globe. Depends on what kind of business you have. You have different go-to-markets. How do you get the stuff you make to the people who buy it? Do you make it in a factory and then put it in a truck that goes on a ship, that goes on another truck, that goes in a warehouse, that goes in yet another truck, that goes in a store, that goes in a cart, that goes in somebody's car, that goes into their kitchen? Or do you just seamlessly deliver it in a digital as-a-service offering over the web? Any way you do it, you have to move that value from you to the person who's capturing and paying for that value. And the more steps you have in those processes, the more intermediaries you have, the more data problems you might run into. So think about how complicated your go-to-market is. And then you've got more and more data coming in from third parties. I worked at Nielsen and Dun & Bradstreet. They have external third-party data that helps enterprises understand their business better. There's more and more data coming from more and more sources across all different kinds of opportunities and markets, and you've got to be able to pull that together too about those common entities. But the classic situation is multiple systems and workflows create disparate data with differing definitions that lack internal standards. I'm not with you today physically, but if I was in the room with you, I'm sure I'd see a lot of people nodding their head. This looks very familiar to a lot of people. In fact, I'm so confident I could put this slide in front of your CIO or in front of the CIO of any Fortune 500 company and say, "Is this your problem?" And they would go, "How did you guess?" Because it's everywhere. And so if I offer you any kind of comfort, it's that these kinds of problems are everywhere. Every enterprise has data, and every enterprise data situation creates similar types of issues. So you're not alone if this is what you're facing. Now the solution is, part of that solution is master data, data management. I always draw it on the bottom. I don't draw it on the side. I don't put it in the center. I never put it on the top, because it's that foundation. You've got lots of silos, you need a foundation. You've got lots of verticals, you need that horizontal value. I even talk about it that way. If you think about these kinds of shapes, rows and columns, think about how you work with data, even just a spreadsheet. Columns are really easy to add on, rows are really hard. Absolutely. Take two spreadsheets and try and put them together. You can always add the columns, but did you align the rows? The same idea, only on an enterprise scale. Same common problem. Or do you end up describing it like this? Is this what you would use? Is this how you would describe it to your CEO? This is a beautifully perfect, fantastic reference data architecture, but it makes no sense to the business side. If this is the kind of thing that you show to your business people, they're not going to be able to support you. They're going to nod on the outside, they're going to be nodding off on the inside. This is the how. It's very important, but it doesn't help convince your business leaders why they should support the kind of data management work that will make sure you can transform in your digital transformation process. Now, MDM can equal pain. I know that. I've seen it. When I deal with people, they don't use those kind of nice and cute business euphemisms like, oh, we have a hurdle or we have a challenge. They talk about physical pain. And I'm reminded of an anecdote very early in my career. I spent some time talking to a sales organization about the data they needed. And the head of sales stood up at the front of the table and said, Scott, you know what? We don't need what you've got. I can slice and dice my data any way I want to. All I have to do is push a button. And this very courageous sales operations person at the end of the table stood up and he said, Sir, I'm the button. It can hurt. If you have to manage data in your organization, it can be a pain. So I'm going to show you what pain looks like. Hopefully you're all at home, but your kids aren't in the room because this is going to be very graphic and very disturbing to some of the data stewards who might be listening here. Are you ready for it? Take another drink. There it is. That's what it looks like. Any of that look familiar? These are from really embarrassingly large global enterprises who don't know what they're doing with Coca-Cola, who can't figure out how to spell Nestle the same way twice, who are having trouble with 7-Eleven. I don't know if you notice it there, but halfway down, 7 equals 11? Not in base 10, it doesn't. This is the problem. This is that garbage in. This is what's keeping you from digital transformation. If your data equivalent of this kind of data went into a smart city, it would be a pretty dumb city. The Internet of Things doesn't work without things, without this being fixed. So there's a really good example of bad data going in that shows organizations, here's the problem. It starts here. It's got to be fixed. That last column, 7-Eleven, that's a retailer up in the U.S. If you're not familiar with them, they have convenience stores, about 5,000 of them across the United States, as well as other locations globally. So that last column came from an organization I was working with that had a retail sales force, people that went out into stores to check on them and fix the shelves and so on. So we took a look at that file, their call file as they called it, and they had over 275 different variations of the 7-Eleven banner name. I'll just leave that up there for a moment. Crazy stuff. A lot of creativity in the field, none of it selling product. It looks like they got a bonus for every new way they could spell 7-Eleven. And if you think the software on its own is going to fix it, if you put this in Excel, you get July 11th. Unless you're over in Europe and then you get November 7th. So it doesn't work either way. Software alone won't do it. You need the data governance, you need the data management processes and procedures in place to make sure this doesn't happen, that this garbage doesn't go in. One way to start to attack that is what I call the 4 C's of master data. How do you structure the data about these important entities? I look at it and say, okay, you need these 4 C's. Code, company, category, and country. The first one, a code.